So this is a little tough to clean just because you can't really take these things apart very well, so kind of the barrel style. But I cleaned a little bit of it, and you can see it's not bad. Um, it's not going to make a big deal unless it's really, really super gross, because that's just the ground. But you still have to complete the circuit. But that part right there, you do need to make sure is pretty clean because that's the one that's going to actually hit the hot. So there is a little bit of corrosion on there. So what I do is I just kind of roll a little kind of cigarette size thing just so I can get it inside this. And then I basically let it unfold and just keep twisting it in a couple directions and stuff. And you'll see the color turn kind of a nasty, kind of a, I'll just show you. It's more or less just take it in here. Just get it to fold in. It's a little tricky at first because sometimes it's a little too wide, which this is. But if you can get it in there, I'm just going to twist it around. Just kind of feed it in there a little bit. And this is 400 grit sandpaper, so as soon as I pull it out, you can see the discoloration that it came off, and it's pretty clean now. So anyways, that's how you can do that. And then the outer rings right there, you can just use some steel wool just to get that. And then again, like I said, you can either use a magnet or a can of air that will blow that out. And you can do the same thing. So for this piece of this, just flatten this guy here and stick it between those two leads. It's a little tricky, but yeah. It's a little bit harder to get in there because it's trying to force those two, but you might have to just get a little sliver piece, yay big, just to get it to be small enough to fit between that. And all you really need to do is just work it a little bit back and forth. It doesn't take much to clean these leads, but once you get them cleaned up, they will function a lot better, especially if you have some static when you plug in your guitar and you keep having to roll the guitar cord until it stops cracking. But if you're ever trying to record or doing a live show, that is an epic pain in the butt. So again, you just kind of feed this in here, and then make sure that you blow it out. Don't spit on it with your mouth. Blow it out with a can of air, and even use some contact cleaner or something else, Q-tip, or some alcohol, just to clean that stuff out. But don't spit on it because that'll be direct corrosion that'll start forming. I've seen that happen way too many times. So anyways, that's a little trick to clean these things out so you don't have to change them, because they're pretty useful. Final little touches, I just use this electronic cleaner, which I've had for, God, I don't even know when I acquired this, but it's got to be 25 years old, and it's still got plenty left in it. But it's got this little nice bristle brush that's pretty rigid, and it's kind of self-cleaning, and I can use it to clean all these other contacts that's in there and just kind of brush all that off. But I want to make sure that nothing residual stays in there, so I'm just using some paper towel to go around it. You can see how dirty that nasty stuff is left in there. So this is really clean now. So it's like brand new. And so those look a little dirty, but you can kind of fish in between them. Doesn't take very much, but that's it. And so that'll make sure that it's dried and there's no dirt or residual stuff in there. So that's how to clean these things. And if you can find this, again, it's just electronic cleaner. This was made from Radio Shack, just to give you an idea. That's proof of how old this is. They don't even have Radio Shacks anymore. But moving on. Here's our setup. Now this is actually the neck pickup, middle, and then this is the bridge. I just kind of swapped, moved it around so I could get to this. Now I always take these things apart because once you put the guitar back, this sounds like it's got a nice click to it, but that doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't mean that the contacts are clean in here. There's a little bit of a trick to getting these things open. Really, you just need kind of a small a screwdriver, and you just kind of move these apart, and once you pull this back piece off and you kind of wiggle it like this, you do need to be cautious. You don't want to break it. But if you can get this first piece out, just so it wants to pop off, and it is sometimes a bear. So you have to kind of be ginger with it. And then get another tool or fingernail or something like that inside this little piece. There we go. And if we can get just anything in there, just enough to pop that out, pull the screwdriver out, just don't let it go back into place. And it's going to want to, but you have to be very, very careful when you're popping these things out, because the little tiny pieces that are inside, I'll show you. You just release that piece, and then you've got those two off. So when you pull this off, it'll come right off like this. You just be very, very careful, because the leads on these things are very delicate and you are not going to be able to fix them, at least not easily. So you just pull this off. Out of the way. Okay. Now when we open this up, that is gooey. Yuck. Now they put that, I guess it's some kind of an electronic spuge or something like that on there. I guess it's just to make it clean or something, to contact, or maybe just lubricate it and keep it from scratching. But that stuff is, I don't know, it's 30 years old and it's gross. So you can do a couple different things. Now, I will advise that you can clean this entire thing the way it is and just leave it be. If you pull this thing out, there's a little tiny spring and a little ball that you have to fit back exactly in a specific order. And you can see that this wafer right here also has a little notch on it, so it only goes in one direction. But the way to clean this, and you can see it's very, very easy to do. I just take a tiny little bit of steel wool. Grab some right here. You do not need much. Got a piece right here. And this is just 4/0 steel wool. And I'll take first one of these little kind of Lysol cleaning rags. It's already pre-moist, and I'll just clean this stuff off just to get the goop off. You can see this one side is already cleaned. And again, you got to be careful, and this is also the time to clean the tips of these things and the tops of this component. It's not a big deal, but you know, somebody else's stuff that's been there for years, so it's just detailing. So I'll clean this out. And that's that. So this whole thing is clean. And again, this thing wants to pop out because there's a spring that's holding it in place. I've done other videos, so if you do pop this thing out, you can probably figure out how to put it back in. But the challenge is, if you're not careful, there's a BB about this big, and if that thing goes flying and the spring goes flying and you've got carpet like I do, you get yourself a magnet. That's your only chance to sit there and just sweep the magnet and everything like that, and hopefully you can pick it up off the carpet with this thing, because if you can't find it, and if you've got dark carpet or something like that, you're going to be in hell. Anyway, so I want to clean that just a little bit better. You can see there's just a little bit of gouging and that kind of stuff, so I'm just going to take this little bit of steel wool and just very, very delicately polish this. Let me see the difference between one side and the other. That's the clean side, and I barely touched that. I mean, I just feathered it just to clean any kind of grunge off. That's it. All right. So that's spectacular. I'm going to blow out any, got a can of air, but I'm going to blow out any of the residual little flakes, because you don't want the steel wool flakes to be in there, because that could cause some definite popping. But these guys right here, we're going to take just this and just rub them only in this direction, okay? If you roll them in this way, you can actually bend them off. So if you do this, we'll see if they... You don't really have to worry about the leads on the bottom, because the only points of contact are at the very top right here. So just do that. I go, there's a lot of people out there that say, don't use steel wool, don't use steel wool. But this is the results of steel wool, and it's fantastic. Perfectly clean. So So when they make those contacts, they're going to be excellent. And again, all you need to do is if you want to get rid of some of the junk, just to show you, here's some residual steel wool. Just look at that. Picks it right up. So if you want to get all the steel wool out of these contacts and everything like that, very simple way to do it. There you go. See how much it picked up? Boom. Want to get it out of this? Go like that. Trust me, I promise you this magnet is going to be stronger than any flake of steel wool. It wants to stick to that, so it'll pull the steel wool right off of this stuff. And again, be careful, get it off of your fingers as well, because you could probably be holding it. And dump that stuff. And again, if you want to make sure that the last little bits are gone, take a can of air like that once or twice, and I promise you, you won't have any problem with steel wool. So that's how that goes there. And when you are putting this back together, want to make sure that it's completely dried. There's no residual junk or anything like that on there. So it's in perfect shape. Clean that. And that is a very, very quick way. You just have to be very careful when you're putting this thing back together. Try to slide on one side first, and then the other should be able to pop on fairly easy. But just be careful not to force anything. Sometimes you might even have to pull these tabs out just slightly. But be very careful about sticking the screwdriver in there, because if you go in too far, you're going to rip those tabs out. So just be very, very cautious when you're putting this thing back together. And I think it's going to want to go back the other way. So if it doesn't pop off easy the one way, try the other. Oops. There we go. They just need to fit into place first. Okay, that's it. I know this takes a little bit too long, but now it's clean. I don't have to worry about any cracking or popping. These are actually very, very common switches for Japanese guitars, Taiwanese guitars, but there you go. Perfectly clean working switch. Never have to replace it. So I put myself into a little pickle. I went ahead and didn't label the backs of these. Now you'd think that it'd be pretty easy if you just pull it out and put it back together, but sometimes when you pull these things out and you do a lot of work to them, or disconnect them, you will forget the orientation of them and all that stuff. I took some pictures and looked at them before because I just wanted to do a comparison. So I know that the outside coils are the screws. But one of the things that you can do is that you can take a voltmeter, if you put it to 20K on your ohms, hook the negative up to the ground and the positive up to the main lead. Make sure that the volume is all the way up, tone is all the way up. And then set your, if you don't know which orientation when you put this thing back in the pick guard, what you can do is just set it to like if you were set it to the bridge pickup. And let's just assume that this is the bridge pickup. If we tap the coil, you can see it's active. There you go. So if we put it in the middle, you can see that it's actually moving. If we tap these other coils, nothing happens. Okay, then we put it into the neck position. And there we go. So we know that that is the orientation of the pickups. And the other thing that you can do when you're actually just confirming that these are the correct ways to go, this right here is going to be the neck outer coil, just to confirm that. We tap it there and then tap this, and they see that they're both doing something. So we know that that is the orientation for those. Theoretically, this whole thing could be flipped around and it would still work, but this wouldn't make any sense. So you'd have to take these and put it way up here and then take this and flip it way down there. And technically that would still work because they're doing the exact same thing. But if you look at it like this, this is the shorter of the cable. and it's closer to all of the components. This is the longer of the cable, so this is farther away from the components. So this is pretty much why they would say that this was going to be process of elimination, is that this is the longer cable, so it's going to be closer to the neck. So this is the neck pickup, and the orientation, as you can see, also this cable's been bent over 20, 30 years, and that's why it is like that. So those are a couple little tips when you're figuring out how to associate which orientation. Does this go back into the pick? Does this face the outside? Does this face the inside? All that kind of stuff. So when you just hook everything back up, if you want to test them, and also before we put everything back together, you can test the coils in each position, outer coil, and this. Oh, and the other little trick that I learned a long time ago is that this will tell you what the resistance is of each pickup. So this is 875. This one is also, this one's about almost 8. In the middle, it's about 630. And in these split positions, it's pretty weak setup. Doesn't have a lot of output, but they're pretty consistent. But I will tell you this, the phase for this is a little bit strange, and I'm just wondering, it'll work because they're all, they're all consistent the way that this is wired. But my only concern is usually what you want to have is you want to have a, when you tap on the coil, you see that when I first tapped on it, the number actually went down. And that means that the polarity is actually in reverse. Because if it spikes going up, then it's actually correct. And the reason I say that is if you reverse this right here, everything will work the exact same thing. But watch now that these are reversed, see the number spiked going up. Anyways, so this right here would be north, and then this. You can see as it goes up is north-south. So this is correct now. So when I go like this, flip it in this position, the number goes up. So that's how you do that.